Sign this now or you're done here. 5 minutes. Not 1 second more. The words hit flat and final. No negotiation. No explanation. Just a single sheet of paper sliding toward me on a desk that cost more than I made in 2 months. The heating vent above his head rattled the same three-note rhythm it always did. I could hear the receptionist laughing at something in the outer office. My hands were cold. I picked up the paper and my vision tunneled for a second. Release of all claims. Severance. 2 weeks' pay. Signature line at the bottom. Nothing else. No reason. No date. No specifics about what I was releasing or why. I had worked there for 6 years. 6 years of walking through that front entrance at 7 in the morning. 6 years of knowing exactly which supplier paid on the 15th and which one always ran 5 days late. I knew the rhythm of that business, the way you know the sounds of your own apartment at night. And now he wanted me gone in 5 minutes because I had asked one question too many. What happened next came down to a single line of text I wrote beneath my signature. But before I explain that, I need to tell you how a furniture wholesaler, a man in an expensive watch, and a father who couldn't remember my name anymore all collided in one afternoon. If you're listening to this, drop a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from. It means a lot. My name is Mara. I am 34. I click my pen when I am thinking, 3 times fast. And I have done it since college when I realized that small, repetitive sounds help me focus. My daughter Callie is 9 and has asthma that flares up every spring and late fall. On Tuesdays, I visit my father at the memory care facility 3 blocks from where I worked. And most weeks, he looks at me like I am a kind stranger who keeps showing up to talk about things he cannot remember. I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment that smelled like the lemon cleaner I used every Saturday. The lease renewed every October. Rent was due on the 1st. Callie's medication refill happened on the 10th of each month. I kept a list of every recurring bill on a notepad stuck to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a strawberry. My life was a series of small, predictable routines. I liked it that way. Predictable meant survivable. I worked for a mid-size furniture wholesaler called Garrett Supply. We moved chairs and tables and shelving units from manufacturers to retailers. It was not glamorous. It was numbers and phone calls and supplier contracts. I was the one who tracked every dollar that came in and went out. I knew when something did not add up. That was my job. That was what they paid me to do. For 6 years, I worked for a man named Horace Garrett. He was 71 and had built the business with his own hands. He remembered my birthday. He asked about Callie's school projects. When my father's diagnosis came, Horace let me leave early on Tuesdays without docking my pay. He was decent, fair. I trusted him. Then Horace died. Heart attack. No warning. One morning, he did not come in, and by noon, we all knew. His son took over. His son's name was Brock. He was 38 and had worked in the business for maybe 3 years total. Most of that time in sales. Most of that time doing the bare minimum. He wore watches that caught the light. He drove a car I could not name, but could hear, coming from 2 blocks away. When he walked into the building as the new owner, 8 months after his father's funeral, he looked at all of us like we were leftovers he had inherited and did not want. He did not ask how things worked. He told us how things would work now. New suppliers, new contracts, faster approvals. We're going to modernize, he said in the first meeting. No more old man business practices. I did not say anything. I went back to my desk and kept doing my job. 3 weeks later, a new supplier appeared in the system. I had never heard of them. The invoice came across my desk for approval. $15,000 for a shipment of office seating. I pulled up our usual supplier pricing. We paid $5,000 for the same quantity from our regular vendor. I clicked my pen 3 times and pulled the contract. The line items did not match. The quantities were vague. The payment terms were strange. Immediate transfer. No net 30 like we did with everyone else. I walked into Brock's office with the invoice. Why does this vendor charge triple what we normally pay? I asked. He did not look up from his phone. That's not your concern. Just process it. I need to understand the pricing. It doesn't match. You need to do what I tell you. I stood there for 3 seconds. He still did not look up. I walked back to my desk and moved the invoice into a folder marked Hold. I did not approve it. The next day, the invoice was back on my desk with a sticky note on top. Do this today. Brock's handwriting. All capitals. I moved it back to the hold folder. 2 days later, another invoice. Same supplier, $22,000. Same vague line items. Same immediate payment demand. Another sticky note. Stop stalling. I did not approve that one either. I started looking deeper. I pulled up transaction histories going back 3 months, right to when Brock took over. There were other payments, small ones at first. A few thousand here and there to vendors I did not recognize. Then, larger ones. They all had the same pattern. Immediate payment, vague descriptions, no supporting documentation, and they all cleared on Fridays, late in the afternoon, right before the weekend, when no one was paying close attention. I clicked my pen and ran the numbers. Over 3 months, at least $90,000 had moved to vendors I could not verify. $90,000 that should have raised flags in our system, but somehow had not. I could not ignore it. That was not how I was built. One Tuesday, I was in the break room heating up my lunch. The operations manager, a man named Glenn, who had been there almost as long as I had, came in to pour coffee. Glenn was 52 and careful. He did not make waves, but he had always been straight with me. Have you seen these supplier numbers? I asked him quietly. They don't add up. Glenn poured his coffee slowly. He did not look at me. Maybe just let it go. Let what go? He walked out without answering. The coffee pot was still dripping. I stood there, holding my container of leftover pasta, and felt something cold move through my chest. That was Thursday. On Saturday, I took Callie to the park. She ran ahead of me toward the swings, her inhaler tucked in my jacket pocket the way it always was. I watched her climb and thought about Glenn's face, about the invoices, about the fact that I had a daughter who needed stability and a father who needed care I could barely afford, even with my paycheck coming in on time every 2 weeks. I thought about what happens when you are the only person who notices something is wrong. On Monday, I came in at 7 like always. My desk was exactly how I had left it. I logged into the system and pulled up the hold folder. All the invoices I had flagged were gone. Every single one. I checked the transaction history. They had all been approved, processed, paid. Someone had gone into my account over the weekend and pushed them through. I sat very still. I clicked my pen 3 times. Then I stood up and walked to Brock's office. Did you access my account this weekend? I asked. He looked up. He smiled. It was not a friendly smile. I have access to every account. I own this company. You can't just approve payments without what? Without asking you? I don't need your permission, Mara. The way he said my name made my skin crawl, like it was a joke, like I was a joke. I'm the financial controller, I said. That's my job. If something doesn't look right, your job, he said, is to do what I tell you. That's it. If you have a problem with that, we can talk about whether you want to keep working here. I walked back to my desk. My hands were shaking. I opened my desk drawer and found the strawberry magnet I kept there, the twin to the one on my fridge at home. I held it and counted my breaths. That was Monday. On Tuesday, I went to see my father. He was sitting in the common area, staring out the window at nothing. I sat next to him and told him about Callie's science project. He nodded but did not respond. After 20 minutes, a nurse came by and said it was time for his medication. I kissed his forehead and left. On the way out, the billing coordinator stopped me. Just a reminder, next month's payment is due on the 3rd. I nodded. I knew. I always knew. On Wednesday, Brock called me into his office and shut the door. He did not ask me to sit. He placed a single sheet of paper on the desk between us. What is this? I asked. Your severance agreement. I stared at the paper. My throat felt tight. I don't understand. Sign it and take 2 weeks' pay, or I fire you right now and you get nothing. The words were simple. The room was not. The heating vent rattled. Outside the door, someone was talking about lunch orders. My vision narrowed to that single sheet of paper. I picked it up. My hands shook. It was a release form. Standard legal language. Employee waives all claims against company, past and future. Vague. No specifics. No dates. No explanation of what I was releasing or why. This doesn't say what I'm releasing, I said. It doesn't need to. You're releasing everything. Everything. The word hung in the air like smoke. I thought about Callie's inhaler, about the rent check I had to write in 9 days, about my father at the facility, about the bills that kept coming even though he did not know where he was most days, about the $90,000 in fraudulent payments I had tried to stop. Can I read it? I asked. You have 5 minutes. 4 now. I read every word twice. Standard termination language. standard release clause. But something about it felt wrong. Not legally wrong, strategically wrong. Why was he in such a hurry? Why was he forcing me out now, today, with no warning and no documentation? Then it clicked. He needed me gone before I could talk to anyone, before I could document what I had found, before I could make it official. He needed my silence, and he needed it locked down legally. That was what this paper was for. He was not firing me because I had done something wrong. He was firing me because I had seen something wrong. My heart hammered. I clicked my pen 3 times. Then I thought about something my father had told me years ago, back when his mind was still sharp. We were sitting in his kitchen. I was 26 and had just started at Garrett Supply. He asked me how I liked it. I told him it was fine, stable, good benefits. Horace is a good man, he said. I've known him a long time. You know my boss? He smiled. I'm part owner, have been since the beginning. Horace and I started that business together in '94. He runs it. I just collect dividends. I had stared at him. You never told me that. Didn't seem important. You got the job on your own. But if you ever need anything, you let me know. That was 10 years ago. I had forgotten about it. Or maybe I had filed it away in the part of my brain that held information I did not need yet. When the dementia diagnosis came 4 years ago, I became his power of attorney. Medical decisions, financial decisions, everything. His estate attorney, a woman named Diane, had walked me through all of it. Legal authority, signing rights, fiduciary responsibility. You can act on his behalf in all business matters, Diane had said. That includes his stake in Garrett Supply. I had nodded and filed the paperwork and never thought about it again, until now. I looked at Brock. He was leaning back in his chair, arms crossed, waiting. He thought I was desperate. He thought I had no options. He thought I would sign because I needed the money and had no leverage. He was wrong. I picked up the pen. His face relaxed. Smart choice, he said. I signed my name at the bottom. Then, directly beneath my signature, in clear handwriting, I wrote, Attorney in fact for minority shareholder, per 18% stake held in trust. I set the pen down. Brock barely glanced at what I had written. He was already reaching for the paper, already smiling like he had won. Good, he said. You can leave now. 2 weeks' pay will be direct deposited. I stood up. I walked out of his office. I did not say goodbye to anyone. I walked through the front entrance, past the receptionist who was still laughing at something, past the parking lot where Brock's expensive car gleamed in the sun. I got in my car and sat there for 30 seconds. My hands were still shaking. Then I drove straight to Diane's office. She was a small woman with gray hair and reading glasses that hung on a chain around her neck. Her office smelled like old paper and coffee. She looked up when I walked in. Mara, what's wrong? I just signed something, I said. I need you to make a call. I explained everything. The invoices, the payments, Brock's demands, the severance paper, the line I had written beneath my signature. Diane listened without interrupting. When I finished, she took off her glasses and leaned back in her chair. Do you know what you just did? She asked. I signed a shareholder request. You triggered the review clause. The original partnership agreement between your father and Horace Garrett included a provision. Any shareholder or their legal representative could demand a full financial audit by formal written request. You just made that request. In writing. Signed and dated. Brock accepted it the moment he took that paper from you. My chest felt tight. What happens now? Now, Diane said. We exercise that right. I'll call the audit firm we keep on retainer. They'll send a team. Brock will have 72 hours to provide full access to all financial records. Or he'll be in breach of the partnership agreement. If he's been moving money the way you described, they'll find it. He'll fight it, I said. He can try. But the clause is ironclad. Horace insisted on it when they formed the partnership. He wanted protection. Your father has 18%. That's enough to trigger review. And you have legal authority to act on his behalf. Brock just handed you the keys. I sat there trying to process it. He didn't even read what I wrote. Men like him don't read, Diane said. They assume. She made the call. I sat in her office and listened to her speak in calm, precise legal language. Formal audit request. Minority shareholder rights. 72-hour compliance window. When she hung up, she looked at me. They'll be at Garrett Supply in 3 hours, she said. 7 people. Forensic audit team. They don't wait. I drove home. I sat in my car in the parking lot of my apartment building and stared at the steering wheel. My phone was in my lap. I thought about calling someone. But who? Glenn would not help. No one else at the company knew what I had found. I was alone in this. Callie was at school. I went inside and made tea. I did not drink. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the strawberry magnet on the fridge, the list of bills, the routines, the predictable life I had built. At 4:15, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Is this Mara? A man's voice. Formal. Clipped. Yes. This is Richard Halford. I'm lead counsel for the audit team your attorney retained this afternoon. We're at Garrett Supply now. I need to confirm a few details. My heart hammered. Okay. You signed a document today with your legal designation as attorney-in-fact for a minority shareholder. Is that correct? Yes. And you invoked the financial review clause contained in the original partnership agreement dated April 1994. Yes, I think so. You did. We've just informed the current owner. He's not pleased, but the clause is binding. We'll be conducting a full forensic review starting immediately. I'll need you to come in tomorrow morning at 9 to walk us through the transactions you flagged. Can you do that? Yes. Good. Bring any documentation you have. Notes, emails, anything. He hung up. I sat there holding the phone. It felt surreal, like I had pushed a button and set something in motion that I could not stop now even if I wanted to. I picked up Callie from school at 5:30. She climbed into the car and told me about her spelling test. I listened and nodded and drove us home. I made dinner. I helped her with homework. I put her to bed at 8. Normal, routine, predictable. Then I sat on the couch in the dark and waited. At 9, my phone buzzed. A text from a number I did not recognize. This is Glenn. I heard what happened. Be careful. I stared at the message. Be careful. That was all. No explanation. No support. Just a warning. I did not sleep that night. I lay in bed and listened to the sounds of the apartment, the fridge humming, the neighbor's television through the wall, Callie's breathing from the other room. I thought about Brock's face when the audit team walked into his office. I thought about what they would find. I thought about what happens when you are the only person willing to say something is wrong. At 7 the next morning, I dropped Callie at school and drove to Diane's office. She was waiting. Ready? She asked. No. Good. Neither is he. We drove to Garrett Supply together. The parking lot looked normal. Same cars, same building. But when we walked inside, everything felt different. There were people I did not recognize standing in the hallway. Strangers in business clothes, carrying file boxes and laptops. The receptionist looked pale. Richard Halford met us in the lobby. He was tall and gray-haired and carried a leather folder. Mara, good, come with me. He led us to a conference room I had never been in before. The table was covered with papers. 3 other people were sitting there, all of them focused on laptops. One of them looked up when I walked in. You're the controller? I was. We need you to walk us through the flagged transactions. Start from 3 months ago. I sat down. For the next 4 hours, I explained everything, every invoice, every vendor, every payment that did not make sense. They took notes. They asked questions. They pulled up records on their screens and cross-referenced my answers. At noon, Richard stood up. We have enough, thank you. What happens now? I asked. Now we finish the audit. We'll have preliminary findings by end of business tomorrow. If what you've described is accurate, and based on what we've seen so far, it is, this will move quickly. I stopped. Will I get my job back? Richard looked at me. His expression was unreadable. That's not my area, but I'll say this. You did the right thing. Not many people would have. I left the building. Diane walked me to my car. What do I do now? I asked. You wait, she said, and you let them do their job. I drove home. I picked up Callie. I made dinner. Normal. Routine. But nothing felt normal. At 8 that night, my phone rang. Unknown number. Again. Mara, it's Richard. I wanted to give you an update. We've uncovered significant irregularities. Over 200,000 in fraudulent payments. Multiple shell companies. All tied back to accounts controlled by Brock Garrett. This is going to get very ugly very fast. My stomach dropped. 200,000. I had thought 90. I had not even seen half of it. What happens to him? I asked. That depends. But I can tell you this. He's not running that company anymore. He hung up. I stood in my kitchen holding the phone. $200,000. Fraud. Shell companies. The words felt too big for the small space of my apartment. I called Diane. I just heard from Richard, I said. I know. He called me too. Mara, this is bigger than we thought. The audit team found evidence of systematic theft, wire transfers to fake vendors, falsified invoices. Brock has been siphoning money since the day he took over. What do I do? Nothing. You've done your part. Let the lawyers handle it now. But I could not do nothing. I lay awake that night thinking about Horace, about how he had built that company with his own hands, about my father, who had trusted him enough to invest 31 years ago, about the 18% stake that had sat quietly in the background all this time, invisible until the moment I needed it. The next day, I did not go to the facility to see my father. I could not face him, even though he would not understand, even though he would not remember. I felt like I needed to have an answer first. I needed to know how this ended. At 3 in the afternoon, Diane called. The audit is complete. Preliminary findings confirm over $230,000 in fraudulent transactions. Brock Garrett has been officially removed as acting owner pending criminal investigation. The board of directors is meeting tomorrow to appoint interim leadership. What about the employees? I asked. That's up to the board. But Mara, you should know. Your name came up. They want to meet with you. Why? Because you're the one who found it. And because you have legal standing as your father's representative. 18% gives you a voice. I did not know what to say. The meeting was set for Friday morning. I wore the same clothes I used to wear to work. I dropped Callie at school and drove to Garrett Supply. The parking lot looked smaller than I remembered. Brock's car was gone. Inside, the receptionist, a woman named Paula, who had always been kind to me, looked up. Mara, they're waiting for you in the conference room. I walked down the hallway. My hands were cold. I clicked my pen 3 times in my pocket. The conference room door was open. 4 people sat at the table. I recognized 2 of them, board members I had seen at company events. The other 2 were strangers. Mara, please, sit. I sat. The man at the head of the table was in his 60s. Gray suit, wire-rimmed glasses. My name is Leonard Voss. I'm chairman of the board. Thank you for coming. We wanted to speak with you directly about what happened this week. I nodded. First, let me say this. What you uncovered was criminal. Brock Garrett systematically defrauded this company. If you hadn't acted when you did, the damage would have been catastrophic. You saved this business. I did not know how to respond to that. Second, he continued, we owe you an apology. You were terminated unjustly. We've reviewed the circumstances. That termination is voided. You're reinstated effective immediately, with back pay for the days you missed. My throat felt tight. Thank you. Third, he said, leaning forward, we have a question for you. This company needs leadership, real leadership, someone who understands the operations, who has integrity, and who has the trust of the employees. We'd like to offer you the position of Chief Financial Officer, full authority over all financial operations. Reporting directly to this board. I stared at him. I'm just a controller. You were a controller, another board member said. She was younger, sharp-eyed. Now you're the person who stood up when no one else would. That's the person we need running our finances. I thought about Callie, about the rent check, about my father sitting in the memory care facility, about the bills I could barely afford, about the strawberry magnet on my fridge and the routines I had built to survive. Can I think about it? I asked. Leonard smiled. Take the weekend. Let us know Monday. I left the building. I sat in my car and cried for 5 minutes. Not sad crying, not happy crying, just the kind of crying that happens when your body finally lets go of something you have been holding too long. That night, I went to see my father. I sat next to him in the common area and told him everything. He did not respond. He stared out the window at the parking lot, but halfway through, he turned his head and looked at me. You did good, he said. His voice was soft, distant. Then he turned back to the window. It was the first clear sentence I had heard from him in 6 months. I took the job. On Monday, I walked into Garrett Supply as CFO. My office was 3 doors down from where Brock used to sit. It smelled like fresh paint. There was a new desk, a new chair, a window that looked out over the warehouse floor. On the desk was a card from the employees. Welcome back, it said. 32 signatures. Glenn stopped by at noon. He stood in the doorway, holding a coffee, looking uncomfortable. I should have said something, he said. When you asked me about the numbers, I should have backed you up. Why didn't you? He shook his head. I was scared. I thought if I kept my head down, I'd be fine. I was wrong. I did not say anything. For what it's worth, he said, I'm glad you didn't keep your head down. He left. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. There were 87 emails waiting. I clicked my pen 3 times and started reading. 3 weeks later, Brock was arrested. Wire fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. The investigation uncovered shell companies in 2 states, fake contracts, falsified tax documents. He had been stealing since the day his father died. He had treated the business like his personal account. The forensic audit found that he had planned to sell the company within 6 months, cash out, and disappear before anyone noticed the missing money. He had thought no one was watching. He had thought I was just a controller with no power and no options. He had thought wrong. The trial took 8 months. I was called to testify twice. Both times, I wore my plain work clothes and told the truth. The prosecutor asked me to explain the invoices, the payments, the pattern I had seen. I walked the jury through every transaction. Brock sat at the defense table and would not look at me. He was convicted on all counts: 18 months in federal prison, full restitution, permanent ban from serving as an officer of any corporation. When the verdict was read, I felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, just a quiet, tired sense that something broken had been set right. I still work at Garrett Supply. It has been 14 months since the day Brock put that severance paper in front of me. Callie is 10 now. Her asthma is under control. I still visit my father every Tuesday. Most weeks, he does not speak. But sometimes, on good days, he looks at me and says my name. Those days, I hold his hand and tell him the company is doing fine, that his investment is safe, that I am taking care of it. Last month, the board voted to buy out Brock's remaining shares and redistribute them among the employees. My father's 18% stays where it is. When he passes, it will transfer to me. I will own part of the place I helped save. I think about that afternoon a lot, about the 5 minutes Brock gave me to read that paper, about the line I wrote beneath my signature, about how close I came to just signing it without thinking, because I was scared and desperate and did not see another way. But I did think. I clicked my pen 3 times and I thought about who I was and what authority I had. And I used it. The heating vent in my office still rattles. 3 notes. Same rhythm. When I hear it, I remember standing in Brock's office with that paper in my hand. I remember the moment I realized he had made a mistake. Not a legal mistake, an assumption mistake. He assumed I was powerless. He assumed I would not fight back. He assumed wrong. 7 lawyers walked into his office 3 hours after I signed that paper. 7 people with laptops and file boxes and legal authority. They walked past his assistant and opened his door without knocking. I was not there to see it, but Richard told me later that Brock's face went gray when they placed a copy of my signature on his desk. When they explained what I had invoked, when they told him he had 72 hours to open every financial record he had been hiding, he tried to argue. He tried to claim I had no authority. They showed him the partnership agreement. They showed him my power of attorney. They showed him that his father and mine had built something together, and that the protections they put in place 31 years ago were still alive, still binding, still enforceable. He had wanted my signature. He got it. He just never asked what power that signature carried. I keep a copy of that severance agreement in my desk drawer now. I do not look at it often, but it is there. A reminder that sometimes the smallest line of text can change everything. That authority is not always loud. That power is not always visible. Brock thought he could erase me in 5 minutes. Instead, I erased him. Not with violence, not with spectacle, just with the truth, a pen, and a single line of text he never bothered to read. If you made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. If it meant something to you, I'd be grateful if you'd hit the like button, drop a comment, and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.